Welcome. Who's feeling good? If you didn't raise your hand, tell us why. I'm kidding. All right, let's get to it. I'm so happy to introduce our next panel. It's going to be a good one. You're going to love it. This next session is coming to you in partnership with Simplecast. Grace Kane, Director of Business Development for a podcast at AdsWizz. We're going to have a conversation between Knicks fan TV creator CP the Franchise and Jackie Maroney, host of the Bachelorette podcast, She's All Batch. Get it? So let's get to it right now. Without further ado, Grace Kane, CP the Franchise, and Jackie Maroney. Welcome.
Good crew. I was a little nervous because revisionist history is right now, and that's like a foundational in like podcast. So, but I feel like this is probably a good crew of people interested in creating content. So that's very fun. I mean, as Sam said, I'm Grace. I'm Director of Business Development for Simplecast and AdsWizz. We work with creators and independent networks of all sizes who are looking to do podcast distribution and monetization, and so we're super excited that we have two of our creators here with us today for a fun conversation. I wanted to get a sense from the crowd to start. How many of you, is anyone in here a Knicks fan?
Let's go.
Yes, okay. Is anyone a fan of The Bachelor or Bachelorette? Yes, okay. Is anyone a fan of both? Do we have any unique crossovers? Okay, and then the last question is anyone in here a content creator, producer? Just want to get a sense of like, amazing, okay, cool, awesome. So I think you guys will really benefit from hearing from both of you all about some, your process and your journey. So I'll kick it to you guys. Want to just give us some background on kind of, a lot of people say that they want to start a podcast, and that's a hard endeavor to venture into, but how did you kind of go from, like, I want to do that to actually doing it? Like, what's the background, what's the story of getting started? And I'll start with you, CP.
Yeah, so for me, and thanks to everybody for having me here. For me, as a die-hard New York sports fan, not just the Knicks, but the Giants and the Yankees, that was my thing growing up as a kid. You would watch the games, then you would go to school, and you and your buddies would argue about it, you would debate about it back and forth. And then at the same time, we had the sports radio stations, WFAN here in New York and ESPN Radio. And nowadays, you see a lot of those debate shows and those guys going back and forth. But it really started here, and in particular, this show on WFAN called Mike and the Mad Dog. And that was my thing. Every day, every night, I would listen to it. But as I was coming up in the business world, I saw, especially from a content standpoint, consumption habits were changing. People were shifting towards more niche style content. And as I was surfing YouTube one day, I saw from the Premier League, they had channels where communities were being built around. And one was called Arsenal Fan TV. And it was based on the Arsenal Football Club. And even though I wasn't a soccer guy per se, the energy from their content and the passion from their content, it reminded me of myself when I'm arguing with my friends. It reminded me of a New York sports fan. And so that's really how I got into it. I bought a $20 tripod from Amazon, and I took my cell phone out the day of the NBA draft. That was June of 2017, and I just started interviewing fans. It was man on the street style content /vlog I had no idea what I was doing, but I said, this is episode 1, and the goal was ultimately to recreate a sports radio type platform in the digital age where we could hear my opinions and the fans could also have their opinions be heard.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, so I also kind of just like fell into this. I feel like when people say, what do you want to be when you grow up, podcaster was not on my short list because it did not exist really as a job. But I always considered myself a really creative person. Like I did acting growing up and singing, and so I was living in LA right out of college trying to pursue that. not really having much luck. And then I had an opportunity for an on-air hosting position. I had never hosted anything before, and they had wanted someone to kind of cover Bachelor stuff. I also had never watched Bachelor before, but I was so desperate to like get some sort of like on-camera experience. So I was like, oh, well, now I watch The Bachelor, of course. And so I started doing that, kind of just diving headfirst into it, not really knowing what I was getting into, but really found that it like nourished that creative side of me. And, you know, I was always trying to like pursue acting and singing and stuff, but this also really felt like I was like, you know, putting on a show every single day. I was getting up and getting dressed for our little production, and so I did that for a few years. And then that company that I was working with ended up getting acquired, so I really missed that outlet, so I started a podcast on my own for a while, and then I think something I really struggled with was I knew I could make really great content, and I knew I'm like a really creative person, but I struggled really like getting it out there and like having a platform to get people to see it. And then kind of in came my co-host of She's All Bach, Stephanie, who had built up a social following. I knew her because she had started She's All Bach as an Instagram meme page, and once reached out to me. We knew each other kind of like through industry stuff. She wants to pick my brain about podcasting because she knew I was kind of doing that on the side. And I was like, oh yeah, like sure. She was like, yeah, I have all these followers, but like I don't really know how to like monetize it. We had a conversation together, and then in an infamous 45-minute phone call, we were like, should we do a podcast together and start a business? And so that's kind of how She's All Bach got started.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's interesting because you both cover franchises that have like very rabid fan bases. And so there is a lot of content being made out there covering these. Like, how do you think about sort of differentiating in a space that there's a lot of noise in it to begin with?
Yeah, no, I can speak to that. I think for me and Stephanie, we very much just like approached our show first as fans and really thought of like, as fans of The Bachelor, what would we want to see? And we started our show in October of 2021, so it was right after the COVID seasons of The Bachelor, which were not that popular. People were kind of losing interest, and so when we started our podcast, we didn't even actually recap the current season of The Bachelor. We just were like, we're in this world, we cover this world, we know all these people, and so we kind of crafted a show that was more focused on like Bachelor Nation news and Bachelor Nation blind items and interviews and behind the scenes stuff, because that's what we as fans like wanted to talk about and wanted to hear about. So I think being a fan of the content itself just kind of led us to have like a unique look into what would really resonate.
Yeah, for me, as Jackie said, I put myself in the fan seat first and choose how I'm going to best give my fans the value that they deserve, because there's so much out there, there's so much content out there, people are doom scrolling every day, so how do we make them stop scrolling? It's through the value from our content. And first, it's through consistency. Like, my fans always know that I'm going to show up for them no matter how good the day was for the team or how bad. And when I first started, it was a lot of that. They lost 65 games the first season, but out of those 82 games, I was there every single night, so they knew what to expect. And then on top of that, from a value standpoint, it's through the collaborations. So us bringing on the analysts from MSG Networks or from SNY or from ESPN, like, we're going to bring in those credible guests that are also going to give value in terms of teaching the game and breaking down the game. So the fans know what to come to expect. And then also from a differentiation standpoint, I tell people all the time, you have to show more of you, because that is the biggest differentiator between all of us, right? I tell people, I'm not you, you're not me. So show that side of you in your content. So as an example, yes, we'll talk Knicks, but in knowing my demographic, we'll run off on a tangent on 90s TV shows, 90s movies that we were into, or how we were handling the snowstorm recently. So just showing the personal side of yourself that people can really relate to, and that authenticity is a big differentiating factor.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what aspects of your content do you feel like resonates most with your fans? And so it sounds like that, having your personality. But are there certain things that when you're in the production are there certain segments that you do that you feel like gets a lot of things that pop, or like aspects of certain types of episodes that you do? Would love to hear kind of your take on that and that process.
Yeah, so I think as far as like getting new people in and finding new listeners, or when we were first getting started, finding listeners in general. I feel like the content that really resonated was mostly like interviews, and lucky for us, people who were on The Bachelor are very accessible and always kind of willing to elongate their 15 minutes of fame, so it was never really difficult to get someone who had been on the show to come on our podcast, and we would just like slide into their DMs, try to get them on. And that usually will bring people in because we tried to ask questions that maybe hadn't been asked in other more mainstream interviews, or maybe ask something in a different way, trying to get something that's unique to our podcast specifically happening there, and that will bring people in. But then going back to the community aspects and getting people to stay, we've also felt that like sharing personal things about ourselves really makes people feel like they're connected to you. Like a lot of people say that they feel like when they're listening to our podcast, they're just like gossiping with their two girlfriends. And so I feel like, sharing those little anecdotes along the way so that people feel that they are connected to you keeps them coming back. Because to your point, yeah, it's such a saturated market with Bachelor too, and so many people are recapping the episode, but you want people to come to hear like what I thought about the recap of the episode, not necessarily what someone else thought, because we're all kind of going based off the same core information, which is the Bachelor episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, likewise, our interviews were huge, and especially during COVID, because during COVID, the NBA season had just shut down, and we didn't know what was going to happen the next day, and the next thing we knew, there was no NBA season for almost 10 months. And so for me, I had to quickly pivot because I wanted to maintain that consistency, and my thought was, how am I going to show up for my fans? And that was calling all the older players, the old players from the Knicks of the 90s, those years where fans really became diehards. And so just one player after another, they would just rip off stories, and all the storytelling was really valued by the fans. And then in the comment section, you would see the fans like, oh, I miss this guy, I remember this, I remember that. And it was major because that is when that content was starting to get picked up on the national stage. So that was big for us. But also, we let the game tell the story. And so as we watch the game and things unfold, the highs, the lows, everything in between, we take those stories and we bring it to the show. What did you think about Jalen Brunson's 50-point game? And it's never been seen before. Karl Anthony Towns' struggles. Do we do a show breaking down film on that? So we kind of let the game do the talking. We listen in the comments section, and that kind of dictates the next set of content that we'll produce.
It's interesting you say the thing about having interviews on from people from way back in the 90s and stuff, because we had a similar approach when we were first starting out. We weren't in good graces with ABC where they were giving us people right off of the show. So we had to same type of thing, dig back to the archives of people who were on the show maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but they still have a story to tell, probably even more so, because they were on the show during a time where social media wasn't as prevalent, so they're not leaving the show with these platforms to share their side of things. So that was a big aspect for our growth initially. At first was getting people who have maybe never shared their story before to come on our podcast.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, because I feel like, you have these niche spaces, but there are other creators in them. How do you think about collaborating maybe I feel like you do that with some of the other, Bachelor or reality TV focused creators, like you try to kind of cross-pollinate our audiences. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. That was also, I think, a way for us to grow in the beginning was just, getting ourselves in front of other people who obviously like similar content. But I think we're all kind of in the same sphere. I consider those people kind of like my coworkers, like Reality Steve, the Game of Roses people. And because we're all people at that level who, we were never on television before, we don't have some big network backing us. We all are kind of self-made in that way. So it's a really nice camaraderie of creators that is always going on each other's shows and supporting each other and doing collabs. And that's been a really nice community, honestly, to find in doing this.
That's so it's funny because I know some of you guys and I see when you guys are on each other's shows and I'm like, that's so cool that you guys do that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that happens? I feel like that happens in your space as well.
No question. The rising tide lifts all boats, and you can't have an ego in this. And it's very easy to when you see somebody else, that's my competition, but you can't look at it that way because they have an audience that's loyal to them that may not know who you are. And so through that collaboration and the value that you're generating, that's a new audience for you. It just makes good business sense. And so, through collaborating with other creators and other analysts from those networks over the years, it's opened up more doors for me in terms of content partnerships with SMY Networks and ESPN and NBA Radio as well.
Yeah, and it's not mutually exclusive too, right? Like just because someone is a fan of Reality Steve or Game of Roses doesn't mean they can't also listen to our podcast, because these are like really niche, like ravenous fans for this type of content.
Yeah, you're super serving them.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I want to talk about a little bit of how do you think, in terms of fan engagement, it kind of segues into when you're thinking about fan engagement and your production process, how do you guys think about the various platforms and you know, the distribution on, like you both have video shows, you do a lot of live streams, I think you guys go live, there's social, there's the classic audio podcast distribution. How do you guys think about those things, and is there a way that you approach the production process for each of them that's sort of individualized, or, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, we do go live sometimes on like Instagram. We don't really do so many like live streams. Most of our stuff is pre-recorded, but yeah, so we do the video aspect of our podcast and the audio obviously at the same time, but I think in thinking about things to clip for social, I feel like that's always in the back of both of our minds as we're currently recording. If we have like a little bit of a banter back and forth, I think we always just kind of like make a little mental note that like, okay, once the episode is done, we're gonna go back and like clip this for social. Or if we're doing an interview with someone and they say something that we think is like super juicy, it's nothing we necessarily write down, but like we're both there, so we see it happening. But it's definitely like you kind of have to be split-brained in that way, where like half the brain is like doing the episode and doing the podcast, and then the other half is constantly like wheels turning of, okay, what are we gonna clip for social? Like what are the moments that we need to like capture for other things? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, so, you know, constraints breed creativity, right? And so I first started making pre-recorded content, but at the same time, I had a full-time day job. You know, I was a manager at an investment bank, so time was not my ally, especially when I have to watch games and then record that content. And so I immediately pivoted and said, I'm gonna do this live and make as polished of a product as possible so that when it's done on video, you can replay it, but also it's good for audio consumption as well for the podcast format. So I thought about that in terms of efficiency, and that's been our go-to method, production method, since I've started. And then in terms of the repurposing, when we didn't have the team, when it was just me, yeah, I would repurpose similar clips and just spread it everywhere just to get our name out there. But now we think about how to make content that's contextual for each platform. So, you know, from a podcast clip or from a show clip, yeah, we may take a 2-minute clip and just put it out there on Twitter, or we may use it in written form for our newsletter, or we may take that and create an Instagram carousel, because that's just better in terms of how it fits that platform. So now that we've been able to grow a team, we now think about each of those platforms individually rather than just, you know, one size fits all.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you guys, and it kind of segues into, like, how do you think about, your content obviously connects you with a community of people, but do you think about community engagement beyond just the content itself? Like, how do you think about that, and what are some things that you guys do as, like, maybe further engagement?
Yeah, I mean, like we have a Facebook group, like a She's All About Facebook group that some of our listeners join, and me and Stephanie are very active in there. We'll comment things, or we'll, you know, share episodes there as well. Anytime someone DMs me, I always try to respond.
Awesome.
And we have in the past done a few like meet and greets or like live shows where we get to actually meet some of our listeners, and that's been really rewarding too. Or sometimes when we, you know, collab with other creators, like every year we go to Reality Steve's birthday party in Las Vegas.
I've heard about this birthday party.
Infamous birthday party. And some of our listeners will now go too because they want to come in and meet us. So I think just like making sure we're available to people. I know obviously like within reason and boundaries and stuff, but we're all here because we love the same thing, and we are, like I said, we're fans as well. So I think just making sure we're like interacting in the conversation regularly.
Yeah, that's everything for us. That's big for us. We specialize in watch parties here, so all the Knicks fans in here, I hope I see you guys at our playoff watch parties this year. We are going to the playoffs, so we are going to win the championship. Don't worry. It's a little downtime right now, but we'll be all right. So we do have watch parties throughout the regular season and into the playoffs, but also in thinking of where are New Yorkers outside of New York, like Los Angeles.
Right.
We went out to Los Angeles a couple years ago, and myself and Desus Knights, formerly of Desus and Mero, we just had a random MLK Day watch party at 33 Taps in Silver Lake, and it was over like 200 Knicks fans. The entire bar was packed. And at the same time, it's NFL playoffs, and the bar put those people on the outside. That's how many people we had. And so, we've done these meetups in Los Angeles, in Miami, in Orlando, in Cleveland. And the beauty of it is that over the years of us doing it, you start to see some of the same faces. So some guys will travel with us to San Francisco. They're in Miami with us. They're in Cleveland, and that's part of that community and the loyalty that the fans have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, want to pivot a little bit to, this is a space where you're figuring out as you guys go, and it evolves. I say, like, at least the podcast industry, but I think the creator space, it evolves, like, significantly every 6 months. There's a new shift that happens in terms of, like, the platforms, etc., particularly on the business side. So I want to hear a little bit about how have you approached the business side of this whole world, and like what have you learned over the years of figuring it out? Because it's a lot to figure out on your own. There's not really a set roadmap for it.
Yeah, I think what I have kind of learned along the way is that, like, you don't have to have it all figured out. Like, just start and you will figure it out. I think our show has had many different iterations of itself over the 4 or 5 years that we've been doing this. And, like, the product that we first put out when we first started is very, very different in content and quality than what we put out now. And I think just trusting that you will learn and adapt as you go along. And a lot of it too is kind of listening to your audience and what they resonate with, and you'll pivot as you see what's kind of clicking. And then as far as like the platforms, like you had said, yeah, I think it's just about like being open-minded and being like adaptable to being able to like add the next new thing, whether it's like another ad platform that's going to do like more DAI ads or something, or it's, focusing more on video, which was something we kind of talked about before. It's just about kind of making sure you're like open to change. I think like you can't be so rigid and like this is how we've always done this, we have to always do it this way. Like you have to change it, you're going to fall behind.
Yeah, for me, in terms of keeping up with the platforms, I go to the school of Gary Vee. So he's been a good ally of ours over the years, and someone who I've learned from a great deal. So when he puts out check this out, whether it's live social shopping, things of that nature, I start to check out the whatnots and those other platforms. Additionally, we look to employ some people from the younger generation because they're up to speed on the latest and greatest and the content, the Gen Z, the Gen Alphas of the world. So we look to bring those people onto our team, and I'm actively listening, like, what do we need to be doing here? I need to solicit their advice. And then, we also, obviously we have different structures in terms of revenue stream, from the YouTube ad revenue, our sponsorships, our merch, our community events, and so we're looking to, my top goal is developing processes in each of those individual streams to make sure that we are capitalizing accordingly. So, but I think one of the challenges right now, as you said, because it's so new and things are changing, there really aren't clear standards in terms of maybe the deals that you're negotiating, or whether it comes to protecting your IP, very important. And so I would say, not all deals are great deals, and not every brand that comes to you with an offer, you have to really scrutinize those things. And really know your worth and know your value, because unfortunately creators do get taken advantage of as well. So that's certainly top of mind for me.
In terms of revenue streams, I'm curious which ones do you feel have been like newer and growing that has maybe surprised you? I don't know if you guys would both have opinions on this, but like which areas of that? Because there are a lot of different ways that creators do end up monetizing. Is there one that you feel like, oh, this is actually one that we should really invest in, like that you're excited about?
Yeah, I don't know about necessarily like investing in, but I feel like in the past 2 years or so, like the DAI space has become so much bigger. I feel like initially when we started, it was mainly baked in ads that we would do, post-read, and now obviously like we work with Simplecast, but there have been other companies that have popped up and approach us kind of on the side to also fill those spaces that are not being filled by Simplecast. And so just learning all those different platforms and being able to like combine all of them is crazy that there's so many that keep popping up. But I think that's been the biggest surprise for me, because at first I thought it was like all baked in ads were kind of like the main way that people are making money.
Very interesting.
Yeah, for us, I would say certainly merch, especially in terms of our branding. Like there's certain things that I say on my show, there's certain segments of our show that fans really navigate to and they're centered on. And so building out merch in relation to that and seeing how the sales are growing and really growing our Shopify side of the house has been really big. And now we're doing merch competitions, or we're having fans vote on what we should feature on our next merch, so really bringing the fans and the community involved in the process. I think it's gone a long way and certainly an area of growth for us.
That's awesome. Okay, I want to open it up for questions, but before I do that, I just wanted to let you guys maybe shout out anything that you have coming up this year that you're excited about, or anything along those lines. Just pitch yourselves as you would like.
Yeah, well, as I said, we're nearing March and we're almost in April, and that is playoff time for us. And so be on the lookout. Make sure you guys are following us on Knicks Fan TV, or sign up for our newsletter, and you'll be notified when we have our big events, our watch parties. And typically we'll try to have some Knicks alumni there for meet and greets, photo opportunities, autographs, and things of that nature. So it's a very big time once the spring gets here.
Love it.
Yeah, and then for us, we are quickly approaching a historic Bachelorette season. Our girl, Taylor Frankie Paul from Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, is going to be the Bachelorette, which they've never done before, taking an established influencer and reality star and putting her in the leading role. And we're really excited about it. I think a lot of people who have kind of dropped off from the franchise are now like poking their heads back out, and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna tune back into this one, but I haven't watched the show in years. So we're definitely trying to put our best foot forward for that, and hopefully get some new listeners, and hopefully it will spark some life into the franchise, and so we can keep this going for like 20 more years.
Yeah, amazing. Those
Yeah.
ABC producers, they're getting
Sneaky,
creative.
yeah.
Okay, well, I'll open it up for questions. What can we guess? We have a first question.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So I'm a veteran comedian, and I was a former agent. I worked in Hollywood and all of the other stuff. So I'm very familiar with IP being stolen, especially if it's not a screenplay and it's not. How often are you guys involved with lawyers? Are you worried? Do you
good
have
question.
a lawyer? I mean, I would imagine that's significant because your IP is very important.
Yeah, for me personally, I have two in my Rolodex that I call and I lean on, at times where I need advice or I need guidance or need contracts made or to review contracts that I may be entering in. I certainly have two lawyers on speed dial
Okay.
that I go to.
So, because they're going to take my microphone away, I just saw them. It's like when you're at dinner and they grab your plate before you're finished. That's like kind of shit that I deal with there. So anyway, my question to you is, so everybody's been, after being a comedian, I mean, podcasting is natural. Like, I could be at talk shows that will anybody talk, but that podcasting is interesting to me, and I resonate with what you were talking about, with the creativity and wanting that. Do you guys, if you were starting out now, as it's more saturated, where would you, I only want to do live. I don't want to do audio because I'm very visual as a comedian. So how would you go about starting? Would you just get a camera for $20 and bring friends on and just start building a following on Instagram or YouTube? I'm just curious.
Good question.
For like starting a podcast?
Yeah, like a video podcast. And is there a specific, I know there's Spotify and Apple,
Yeah.
but what platforms are for videos?
YouTube is the main one.
And you guys as well, right?
We will be supporting Apple Podcast Video soon, and we have been developing other app video features generally.
Okay.
So it's a big conversation in the space right now. Video, like the transition to video, and how do you monetize it, and how do you distribute it, and so our platform is very much.
Is there a newsletter to follow you guys on Simplecast?
Oh yeah, we should put that up here.
I'm
We
gonna
got a
find
marketing
you.
team up here, so that they'll give you all the info.
Okay, I found the people.
Amazing. Okay, perfect.
So
Yeah.
anyway, you guys were finished what you just said, because I was interested.
Oh, yeah, I think as far as getting started, I think YouTube is a great place to start if you
So
want to
just
focus on
create a
video.
YouTube channel channel and what, start talking to myself?
Yeah, I think if, as far as equipment, things to like invest in, get a good mic, honestly.
I could talk by myself, I really could.
I would say as far as equipment, because it can get expensive with the cameras and the mics and the lights. I think a mic is the most important piece of equipment. If you have like a MacBook or anything, like the cameras on there are like not too bad if you're just starting off.
Would you
and
get
just
the
want
external camera for a regular,
We use external cameras, yeah.
okay. And you just said you started with a tripod.
Yeah, just a tripod. I mean, I would say for you, like when I see my comedian friends like Sam Morrill, if you know Sam Morrill,
I know the
those
name.
guys will put clips of their stand-up.
I have clips on
Put
Instagram.
your clips on Instagram, on TikTok, make sure your captions are on, but also react to what's going on in the news through your lens, right? Because those are hot topics that people are searching for
I'm
anyway.
not political,
But
I'm more
it doesn't have to be
social
political, it
commentary.
could be what's going on with The Bachelor, who
If I was
broke up.
like doing one right now, I'd be talking about The Bachelor and
Yeah.
like the Golden Bachelor.
Oh my god, you guys can collab.
Yeah,
No,
there you
I
go.
need to talk to her about the Golden Bachelor because I think
Oh,
that
great
is
show.
a fabulous thing.
Perfect.
Because I could create like a lounge for over 50 in New York City. Okay, I'm totally taking over.
I'm glad that On AdsWizz is going to be like the catalyst for this new show. I love it. Yeah, it is a good question though. I mean, how do you guys, sorry, I know there's more. I'll let you. I had a question about like, how do you feel about the YouTube algorithm helping you grow audience? Like how significant do you feel that has been? Because that is one of the areas that in audio only distribution, there's not really an algorithm to help you grow and find new audience in terms of content. But,
Yeah.
And then we'll let another question.
YouTube has been huge for us as
Yeah,
far
I can
as
imagine.
finding a new audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to your point, it's very difficult. If someone is looking for your show on audio only, they kind of have to be the one to physically type it into the search and press play
Yes.
versus on YouTube, the algorithm is great in showing you content that's similar to what you're already watching. So we found our numbers grow significantly by just being suggested to people on YouTube.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, YouTube's been everything. That's why I started there. And whether it's search, people searching Knicks, or people searching Knicks Fan TV, KFTV, they can always find us. And then the suggested videos, they can also find us as well.
Yeah, cool. Okay, we had a lot of other questions. We'll go
Hi.
for oh, whoever. I don't know. I don't know if I'm supposed to be picking the people. Okay, you're
Okay,
right. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Hey, how are you? Is it CP? Okay, CP. I hope you'll answer my question. I'm Dan from Boston. Let's go Celtics. Let's go Celtics. So you mentioned merchandise. I was interested. So my question is, I went to your website. Are you selling off Instagram, selling off the website, but how do you balance the commercial part with the content part? So you aren't like selling out hawking, whatever it is, but you also have to have that revenue stream.
Yeah, it's a fine balance. It's just like any other like ad read that we would do. We do sprinkle it in the content. I mean, most of my shows will average between 1 and 2 hours a show. So every now and again, we'll plug the newest T-shirt or the latest hat. But also on YouTube, we have our shop integrated on the bottom where people will find it, just there. And then also on all the other social media platforms as well. And so, we don't look at it as hawking, we look at it as a way for our fans to enjoy our merchandise and also to support us as well.
And good luck to you, sort of.
Thank you.
First of all, I am one of those weird Bachelor Knicks fanatics. CP, you and Magri helped me a lot in 2020 COVID times. So good to see you. My question is, with your content, you go very deep with your fan base. It's a big fan base, Knicks, Bachelor, but it's still limited, and that's kind of the beauty of podcasts, right? Like, it can go broad and it can go niche at the same time. But at this point, you guys are, getting bigger. Does it frustrate you that there is a cap to that growth? Because, I'm not sure how much a Celtics fan is going to tune into you after every Knicks postgame, So how do you think about expanding that breadth of your growth?
Yeah, no, we've had to think about that a lot. It's probably similar to your situation. And we've kind of done it by covering other reality TV shows that we think, people who are fans of The Bachelor would also be watching and be interested in. So sometimes we do that. We're recapping Traitors right now, finale tonight. Woo. And then we've also implemented another segment which we call Sound Off in the Comments Below, which our listeners really love because they get to feel involved in it. We put up little question boxes on our Instagrams and then people will throw in questions, pop culture topics, and just things that they kind of want us to get into. And a lot of times it's just like entertainment news stuff or other reality TV stuff, and we do a whole episode just kind of riffing off of those topics. And so that's how we've been trying to kind of expand to like a wider audience, especially if there's like a big entertainment news story, like the like Lively and Justin Baldoni thing was huge. People were really interested in that, so we covered that for a while. So yeah, it's just kind of finding other things that resonate with a similar audience, because you know, people who watch Bachelor don't only watch Bachelor all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, I don't necessarily see it as a ceiling, because sometimes you walk on the street and you'll see somebody who recognizes you, but sometimes you don't. And so that's why I'm always engaging with Knicks fans and promoting the product and selling the product. For example, I met someone in the supermarket who he knew who I was, but only through the audio side. And so he had no idea about the YouTube, the videos, and the social media content. And so, that's why we do produce more top-of-funnel content across our social media platforms to get new followers and to get new viewers. And then from a collaboration standpoint, when we structure our content around like game previews, and I'm bringing on another creator who may cover the Boston Celtics, we'll get those fans, those Boston Celtics fans, who may also be NBA fans. We have Detroit Pistons fans who, they like our content better than the Detroit guys, right? So, truthfully. So, that's how we're also growing our fan base within the niche.
There's one in the back and there's one here.
Hi, I have a question. I've been doing a podcast for about 6 months now, and I've started to monetize it, and I'm working through a platform called Code 80X, and I have been working pretty closely with the owner of this platform, who has suggested that going into commercials, I should just go right into them without any buffering in between. I've been getting great feedback from my fans and friends, and who are saying, that's really jarring, and I'm still at this point in which I'm, obviously I have to keep monetizing it. It's a fairly new experience for me, but I want to keep the conversation flowing, and just like a lot of people who listen to podcasts, I sometimes tune out once the commercial pops in.
Yeah, it's kind of a balance. I think sometimes you need to kind of weigh if you want to make the listener happy or if you want to make the advertiser happy. As much as I agree maybe with your listeners that like it can be kind of jarring when you just cut to an ad immediately in the middle of a conversation, I feel like a lot of content creators do that, especially because that's how you're going to get someone to listen to any aspect of the ad, right? As soon as they hear the transition, they're just going to fast forward. You run a higher chance of them at least hearing some of it if you cut right into it. And I think it's just one of those things that like listeners are always going to complain about ads. They complain about our ads, but they're still listening, and you know what, it just kind of like is kind of the name of the game at the end of the day. So you can't please everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, as she said, it's definitely a balance, but as you get more reps and more experience, you'll figure out ways to infuse it and transition seamlessly. So, for example, like we have a current brand deal with Mando. They do whole body deodorant. The Knicks have not been doing so great, and so at some points in the show, we'll say, hey, you know what, the Knicks stunk up the joint, but you don't have to. Go over to Mando and then we'll transition into our read. Or we've had deals with Manscaped, which is a razor below the waist for men. And so we've kind of joked around with that breed, and it's taken on a life of its own in terms of its own branding, and the fans coming to expect that breed on our show. So I think with more experience and more reps, you'll figure out ways that balance.
I think that's a good point too. Like working with brands that you authentically really love and enjoy, and you think your listeners will also genuinely want to hear about, I think makes for an easier transition too.
Just one more comment. So if you've got serious content, of a serious nature, I think that's where the balance is difficult for me. Right? It's like these are serious topics.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, go in and talk about cozier sheets or whatever it is, and that to me is the serious nature of the conversation about what's happening in Minneapolis right now, which is where I live, and then jumping into, some product that has no correlation.
Yeah,
It's easier
totally.
to maybe a layered topic.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's tough. And then maybe for your unique podcast, it makes more sense to have a transition. You know, I think everyone's show is different and everyone has unique circumstances, and yeah, that might be better for your listeners because of the nature of the content. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Right here.
All right, thank you very much. Hello everyone, I'm Simon Applebaum. I'm the producer and host of Tomorrow Will Be Televised. It's the audio program podcast that covers the world of television. We're now on our 19th year on the air, by the way, and live on Facebook, TalkShoe, and YouTube. By the way, one quick note. Spencer Hudnut, the showrunner of Marshalls, the new CBS series that's premiering Sunday night from Taylor Sheridan, will be our lead guest tomorrow on our show at 3 o'clock.
Love
There
it.
you go.
Shout out.
To answer your question, you should also know that Netflix is looking at doing video. In fact, they have already got Spotify and Bill Simmons to do video podcasts on their program. There's a network called Video Podcast Network that is running on smart TV sets and devices. And there are 2 services I also know that have been on our program. One is OG Network, that Ice-T, the co-star of Law & Rescue, is involved with. It's also doing video podcasts. And there's an entrepreneur out of Atlanta named Jay Walker, who has taken his podcast, and now he is putting a network together that's running on smart TV sets and devices also. That's mostly video podcasting. I wanted to ask about how both of you know how many people are listening to your show. One of the issues that we are dealing with is that more and more programming services that used to have guests on our program are not getting us guests, whether it's HBO, whether it's Paramount Plus, whether it's Roku, whether it's Tubi. And I have a feeling that one of the issues is that they want more details about how many people catch our show. We're on 42 podcast sites, including Audible, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts. We have independent sites like Moon FM, True Fans. We want to talk to you, Grace, by the way, about being part of Simplecast. And even though we have that, and we have a website, and we have the live simulcast, we do not get numbers. There is no national clearinghouse or repository that we can find out freely how many people listen to our show and when they listen. So the only thing I can do when I am, trying to invite guests to come on our program or down the road to get advertisers is we have thousands of people listen to our show every week. And we do get numbers from Zencaster every week. We get numbers from TalkShoe, which is our main distribution hub. Mm-hmm. How do you get the numbers? And are you having issues where people are coming away and saying, nope, that's not enough for us to have guests on your program?
Good. Yeah. Well, where are you hosting your podcast?
I do it from home. I do it from where I
No,
live.
but like, where do you upload it to?
TalkShoe.
And they don't have data for you?
They do. TalkShoe has analytics. Last month, we tried to get into the National Retail Federation's event because they had people that we wanted to reach from Walmart, from Google, from YouTube, from Alexa Plus. One of the big stories now is the ability to use television for all sorts of ways by using agents that are embedded in TV sets like Alexa Plus, like Microsoft's Copilot, like Google Gemini, and so forth. And we could not get in because the PR people at NRF, which runs the event called Retail Big Show at the Javits Center, would not let us in because they wanted us to give us quantifications from Spotify or Google. Huh. And we gave them TalkShoe, we gave them Zencaster, we gave them, what our deal is, and they would not let me in. And that really, and it's like, it's an example of they are going for certain analytics and they're not addressing the issue of we can't give them the analytics and we don't want to spend, whatever the amount is just for one event to go to. And it's the first time, by the way, in covering television that I've ever had an issue of getting to the Javits Center. I went last month, the month before, to the AI Summit, and no problem.
I think, do you guys want to talk a little bit about analytics? Just like how you find your numbers from across your platforms?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think you need to switch your hosting service because we work with Simplecast and we see our downloads there very clearly. And before we worked with Simplecast, we worked with a smaller service called Podbean. If your show is smaller, they show the analytics as well. So you should be able. It's shocking to me that you're not able to see the analytics on the site you're currently using.
We do get Spotify once a year, by the way.
Once a year? Oh my God.
No, Spotify you should get your Spotify
every day.
Yeah, every day. Yeah. You can just log. Are you on Spotify?
We can talk. We can talk. I'll tell you more.
Simplecast,
Yeah, I'll
they
tell
have
you
great
more.
analytics,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Front. Yeah, we'll front. Yeah. And there's one in the back, and then we have to round.
Hi.
I have two questions, but feel free, whichever one. I promise they're good. One is, I was curious how you plan and structure your episodes in terms of how much you do like improv and playing off the guests and their energy, and like how much prep goes into it, because I feel like a good podcast episode, you don't know how much work goes into it. I just listen and I'm like, wow, what a great conversation. So I'm curious from you two, like what you're planning and like what goes in before you even get to like sit down with someone. And then the other one I was just curious about is, for both of you, very quick, like what you think makes a good podcast host.
Yeah, I can take it. Yeah, so as far as prep, obviously if we're interviewing a guest, we're doing research on them and we're writing our questions ahead of time. But even with that, sometimes you don't know where it's kind of going to go or where they're going to take it. And sometimes they answer a question in a way that you might not expect, and you have a follow-up question. So you can prepare as much as you want, and then it's kind of a dance between the guests. And then for the normal episodes that I do with my co-host, where we're maybe just recapping an episode, a lot of it is improv and banter back and forth. When I'm watching a Bachelor episode, I sit there with my little notes on my computer, and I just kind of like stream of consciousness will write like main points or reactions or feelings that I had during the episode, and then me and Stephanie do not talk to each other, and then we come to record. She has her own separate notes, but then once we're face to face, like the notes kind of go to the wayside and we just have a genuine conversation. But because we prepped with those notes, all those points end up coming up as we speak. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I'd say for us, because we're game and team specific, the season kind of dictates your content calendar. So for the off season, we'll have a draft series where we talk about the NBA draft. When I go out to Las Vegas for NBA Summer League, we're reacting to the Summer League games. When the season starts, game by game, we will react. Then you have the trade deadline. So you have different seasons within the season, and that kind of shapes your content. When we're doing interviews, if it's someone who's coming on for the first time, we'll talk Knicks, but as I said earlier, I'm focused on value. So if it's a high achiever, I want to know, I want to pull out those gems. How did you get to where you are now? What are some advice that you have for people who I want to inspire my audience and give them that value? So I'll prep those questions accordingly and make sure that I'm asking questions that maybe haven't been asked before, or maybe it's a follow-up based on a previous interview where we can kind of steer it down a different direction.
So did you have another question to it?
What do you think makes a good podcast host?
I think honestly, listening more than talking and being genuinely curious about what the other person has to say, whether that's a guest or it's your co-host. My co-host will have an opinion about something, and instead of just being like, oh, that's crazy, and moving on to the next point, I think it's a much more thoughtful conversation to be like, wait, why did you think that? Why were you thinking this? And just constantly asking questions, I feel like really spurs a lot of conversation.
Yeah, I would agree as well. It's definitely just being prepared with your question, but active listening. And so a lot of times when I have guests on for the first time, I'll have a structure, a set of questions that I want to ask, but as I've gotten more reps, I've deviated from that and just went with their flow, and then make sure that my follow-ups are there accordingly, and then it just makes for a more natural conversation rather than just question, answer. And then, I can only speak for myself, but during games, just having a structure, making sure you have your segments, but also changing the temperature. And so if these guys are on a terrible losing streak, yeah, we'll react accordingly. I might raise my voice, I might be a little bit more passionate, a little bit more emotional, and then I may change to 90s movies. Let's have some fun and let's end on a high note. So I think all that comes with experience and with practice and with more reps. You'll figure out your lane and how you want to best deliver yourself, present yourself.
Amazing. Okay, we have one. Do we have time for one? Okay, let's do one more again.
Awesome. Thank you. I just want to say to the three of you, thank you for coming out and taking the time. I'm very grateful to be here. So my name is Ralph Anthony. I'm a comedian here in the city. I'm launching a podcast about mental health. So I have two questions for you. Since I deal with comedy and I'm a mental health advocate, what would you recommend focusing on one aspect of it, like one sense of community with comedy or with mental health, or trying to cast a wide net to grab everyone? And then my second question would be, as you're on the come up trying to monetize your podcast, what tactics would you recommend to reach out for sponsorship in order to try to bring in revenue to help support the podcast?
Yeah, so as far as like the balance between comedy and mental health, I think that's really just, you know, what's most authentic to you and what you feel like would be the right balance there. I think they both go hand in hand. Like we talk about a lot of mental health on our show, especially like a lot of people come off The Bachelor like traumatized and upset about how their edit went. And so I do think like there is a way to kind of integrate mental health into most conversations that you have about any topic, but I feel like comedy and performing specifically can definitely, I think, actually spark really interesting conversations, and that could be a really cool niche. And then as far as like trying to reach out to brands, when we were first starting out, we would look and see what brands were working with like other Bachelor podcasts or other Bachelor influencers and cold email them or slide into their DMs, and you know, for every like 50 messages you get maybe one back. But I think trying to find shows that are similar to your show, reaching out to those advertisers and just being like, hey, I have a similar audience, what would you be interested?
Yeah, I would say before casting a wide net, you know, double down on what you do best. And so if it is comedy, put your clips out there, put your segments from your shows out there, like other comedians are doing. As I was telling her, reacting to what's going on in the world. It doesn't have to be politics. It could be anything that's relevant, whether it's The Bachelor, The Knicks, whatever it is, and put your comedic spin on there. And then, you know, as you build your audience, as you build your following, if you want to segue into your mental health and some mental health issues or best practices in dealing with that, then I think that would certainly be helpful. You certainly had people within Hollywood who have been dealing with that. Skolnick from Revenge of the Nerds, he just passed away. You know, react to that. Martin Short lost his daughter. You know, react to that. You know, remember Robin Williams and the anniversary of his passing. What did he mean to you if he did mean something to you? So I think that's a good way to really segue into that lane while still being true to who you are.
Beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Such good insight. Wow, that is really good. Thank you. And so thank you all so much. Thank you guys. This is awesome. We went over.
Thank you.
This is so much better than revisionist history. Who needs that? Thank you. And you guys will be around, so I guess if there are more questions that didn't get answered, I think you guys we can all hang. So.
As you get up and gather and go to your next thing, just a few announcements. This stage will be on break until about 3:30, but things will start back up across the fest around 3:30 p.m. And in the screening room here at the Wife, the hosts of Deck the Hallmark are going to be joined by Hallmark heartthrob Michael Rady himself, brought to you by partnership at Simplecast. And then XXV at 3:30, Tracy Clayton will present a live version of her segment, Tracy's Animal Corner. Games, quizzes, interviews, and Tracy's strong opinions on animals. At 3:30 here, we'll have The Signal Live, featuring host Terry Rice, talking to Baratunde Thurston from our partners at Fiverr. Okay, thank you, go for it.